I'm going to say it again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to introduce you to someone who at one time I said I would never introduce to anybody, and I mean anybody but the people in my family. But thanks to the inspiring class of a lady named Professor Randall, today I must retract that statement. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Fuzzy the Bear.
Oh, he's so cute.
Yeah. And due to my increasing age, him and I are not as close as we used to be, but he will always be a part of my family. According to the National Park Service, November 14th, 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt, along with his assistant, led by Hope Collier, a natural-born slave man, later a Confederate cavalryman, went on a hunting trip in Arnwood, Missouri. Now, Roosevelt was known for being the big hunting guy. Everybody knew that. While on this trip, his assistant, as well as Mr. Collier, cornered a black bear into a willow tree. Don't ask me how, but they were actually able to tie the bear to the tree. Then they ushered Roosevelt over to kill the bear. He viewed this as very unsportsmanlike, and thanks to his big bear of a heart, he wouldn't shoot the bear. And just like any of our friends would do us, they went and told everybody. And then they told everybody, and then they told everybody, and eventually it was in newspapers all across the country. It even later became a cartoon depicting the story. And then one day a man named Morris Mitchum, who was a stuffed animal creator, requested the president's permission to name the bears after him, thus the teddy bear. Then many, many years later, I was one of the millions of children to receive one. I received this bear between the ages of 3 and 4. My parents can't recall exactly what age, but it was between that age. And soon after receiving him, he quickly went from being a toy to a family member. Because not long after I got him, I would from then on refuse to go to sleep at night unless he was at my side. Seriously, it could be midnight, everybody sleep, and I could have been playing all day, tired and wore out, but if my head hit that pillow and he wasn't beside me, all you was going to hear is, "Mama!" My dad, she'd be asleep, my dad say, "She sleep, man, what's wrong?" I'll say, "Where's Fuzzy?" Needless to say, I wasn't going to sleep unless somebody found the bear. I wasn't actually the one that gave him the name Fuzzy. My mom used to see me around the house when I first got him, and she would say, "Oh, you got your fuzzy bear," or "Where's your fuzzy bear?" because he was so fuzzy, and it stuck with me, so I called him Fuzzy the Bear. It was more than just a stuffed animal. He was a friend, because being an only child is not exactly a cakewalk, though many people view it as that. They say, "Oh, you don't have to fight for your parents' attention, and you get to keep all your birthday gifts. You don't have to share anything with anybody." But to be quite honest with you, there were quite a few birthdays where I wished I had a sibling at home to share my new toys with. My father would buy me a bunch of toys and video games because I was the only child. He knew they had to keep me entertained, and he would play with them with me as much as possible, watch wrestling with me. My mom would play with me. She would watch my kids' shows with me. But they're adults, and adults had adult things to do, so they couldn't spend every ounce of their day with me. They would have my best friend Graceland come over, who would spend much time with me, play with me. She even went on a few trips with us. But she had her own family to go back home to. She couldn't be with me every week, every day, every second. So then it was just me and the bear. And as a little boy, I would set up my toys in my room and sit him up beside me as if he was playing with me. I would play video games and sit my controller in front of me and actually set a controller in front of him. And my father used to jokingly say, "You already know if that bear ever pick up that controller, you're going to run straight out this room." But to be quite honest with you, there were quite a few times where I wish he would have picked the controller up. But he didn't. But he was still that friend. He was a smile when it was always needed. If I came home from school sad or upset because somebody's child was picking on me or bullying me for whatever reason, I could count on the bear to be smiling. If I was so sick to the point that I couldn't even go to school that day, I could count on the bear to be smiling. If my parents were arguing to the point that my dad would even come and close the door in my room so I wouldn't have to hear all the confusion going on outside the room, but yet the words of much frustration and anger would still pierce my doors and ring in my ears, the bear would still be smiling. Now, don't get me wrong, in no way, shape, or form did this bear replace the love and the peace I feel from my Heavenly Father. But it was almost as if my Heavenly Father used the smile and warmth of this bear to let me know everything was going to be okay. According to StuffedParty.com, and yes, there's a website called StuffedParty.com, there was research done where they distributed stuffed dogs to the children in war zones such as Gaza. And off of parent-based testimonies, they found out that 82% of the children living there dealt with severe stress, anger, aggressive crying, depression, all because of what was going on where they lived. So then they distributed the stuffed dogs. 2 months later, 71% of those children no longer had the severe stress reactions. See, the war zone I experienced did not involve guns, knives, or even explosives, but it involved words. Words that to a child who loves both his parents and just wanted to see him happy felt just as bad as hearing a gunshot or an explosion or a knife wound. My parents are now divorced, but speaking terms are better than they were. They both are part of my life. I live with my father, but my parents still cooperate. But for that reason, this bear will always be in my life. Because just like those children, this bear helped me through that war zone. And to be honest with you, during those times where it seemed like mommy and daddy are upset, they're arguing, I didn't like it, I would pick the bear up and hug him. And to be honest with you, it felt like he was hugging me back. He's been a part of my life. Everything that had to do with my success, it seems like he was a part of it. He was my homework helper. When I first started school, I would come home from school, I would set up my table, I would sit in my seat, set up another chair right beside my seat, and sit him in it, as if he was going to help me with my homework. He never said nothing, but he was there for support. And between him and my mom, we were going to figure out the answer. When I was a toddler, I used to sit him up on the wall, along with a few of my other toys, and actually preach to them, and act as if I was a pastor. I would later go on to have my first sermon at the age of 10, and been preaching ever since. But you know what? He was a part of the process. When I was a toddler, I got my first keyboard. It was about this big, had maybe 25 keys on it, the musical keyboard. Had maybe 25 keys on it. And no matter who in the world didn't want to hear me banging all day, Fuzzy was still there smiling and supporting. And now my Heavenly Father would eventually take that banging noise and turn it into sweet melody, which would lead to me becoming a songwriter. But Fuzzy was a part of the process. I'll give you another quick example I just thought of. During my other speech, I moved way too much. Like my feet was all over the place. The fact that the bear is here, I'm not even moving. He's a part of the success process. He's just always been there. I mentioned in my first speech about how I went through a point in my life where it was like 1 month, I was a freshman in high school, where I felt less than what I was. I felt like because of my complexion or my height or because I wasn't as muscular or as, football player Trey Songz-ish as most of the other guys in the school, girls wouldn't like me. A few actually told me that. So I went through a period where I felt so bad about myself, about my complexion, which led to a conversation with my dad that would solidify our relationship forever because he helped me through it. But I'll never forget sitting on the side of my bed and thinking about myself, thinking lower than what I really am. And for the first time in a long time, freshman year in high school, I picked the bear up and hugged him. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, it felt like the bear was hugging me back. It was almost as if I had your back then, I got your back now. According to encyclopedia.com, by 1907, 1 million teddy bears have been sold. Of course, you can assume by now, millions more have been sold. Millions of children probably have them. I don't know everybody's relationship with a stuffed animal you might have had, but I see this as more than just a stuffed animal. He was a safety blanket. He was a friend to talk to. He was a friend to play with. He was my homework helper. He was my first musical critic and even my first congregation member. But more than all, he was the little brother I always wanted. And he will always be a part of my family. Thank you.